Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon, depending or what time you are watching this broadcast. And today I'm thrilled to have one of the iconic brands in travel over the last, 30 or 40 years, 50 years maybe. I think I first bought my first Lonely Planet book when I was at university, which is, as you could probably gather, some years ago. And I'm delighted to have Tom Hall from Lonely Planet, who's going to talk to us about their new UK routes. Good morning or good afternoon, Tom.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Beautiful sunny day. I'd like to be out exploring myself, actually, rather than here, but never mind.
Exploring one of your routes.
That would be very nice. I think, yeah, there's loads to choose from.
Tom, I spoke about Lonely Planet as being an iconic travel brand, and obviously even behind me, you can probably see some Lonely Planet books that I've acquired over the decades. First of all, how long has Lonely Planet been going? I've got books. Is Lonely Planet still relevant in an online environment?
Well, Lonely Planet's been going since 1973, so we're zooming in on our 50th anniversary, which is going to be quite the landmark for us. And we continue to publish books to many destinations around the world, including Great Britain, as we're talking about today. We have a very active and engaged online community. So clearly I am going to want to say to you that the answer to that is yes, as well as having our own website, which has very comprehensive destination profiles, video, images and guidance for people who are planning trips. We're also very active in social media spaces with followers and fans that are 1 million strong across platforms that you would know, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and some new ones. We've just launched our TikTok channel, which we've been really encouraged by how it's been received so far. So we try to be wherever travelers are fundamentally, and even if people in this country, for instance, aren't planning a trip overseas as much as they can, we know that they're very keen to think about where they can go when they can, and also think about what alternatives they might have in this country.
Well, Lonely Planet has always been associated, I suppose, brand-wise with people like me 30 or 40 years ago, student, Lonely Planet, backpacking, trying to find places, good places to go, etc., etc. I think your image and your brand credentials have changed somewhat since then, but it's predominantly overseas destinations. I think I'm not aware of really sort of the link between Lonely Planet, UK audience and domestics, but that's changing now. You've got a new guide out now. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about that, and am I right in saying that you've not always been associated with domestics?
Well, Lonely Planet's a global brand, so we obviously have our heritage in being, an Australian company when we were first founded. We're now US owned with a growing footprint in North America, and we have a strong audience in the UK and across Europe. I think we publish in 13 different languages at the last count. So, very much global organisation, but one that is very responsive and listening to how people are travelling, and the change in how people are exploring the UK over the past 20-25 years has become quite marked. There's been a huge sea change in the type and availability, range and quality of accommodation and food in the UK, which attracted people both from overseas and also got us exploring a little bit more. The other thing that's clearly relevant at the moment is that we're just simply not able to travel overseas as much as we would all like to. So with all of that in mind, we have a new title, which is Great Britain's Best Trips. And it tries to do something a little bit different than maybe if people have had a Lonely Planet guide covering Britain, England, Scotland, Wales, in the past. It breaks down areas of Great Britain into 36 different routes, and they range from a sort of 21-day odyssey covering the entire country to things that may be shorter, down to 1 to 3 days. The idea with that is that we're saying to people, there are certainly some places in the country that are going to be and feel quite busy. One way to get around that is to take a road trip where you don't stay in one place. So you're moving around, you're pausing to enjoy what you're seeing on the way. And the other is hopefully picking a few surprising regions that people may not have thought of to travel in. So there's a little bit of that sense of challenge, a bit of a sense of serendipity that we know that people look for from Lonely Planet, and also revealing some of those hidden gems as well. That's the idea behind the title.
Cool. Well, as I mentioned briefly on our intro chat before we started recording, the press release talks about many places in the UK, many resorts being packed out. Basically, you can't get in. You know, if you want to book somewhere, can't do it until probably September, October time because it's so busy. Your press release gives the impression that you're going to go off the beaten track, that that we're going into some sort of domestic Shangri-La where there won't be anybody other than you on the open road. But the obvious point of that is that if your book is successful, then you're just creating more traffic queues in places that don't normally have them, aren't you?
I'm not sure about that. I think the first thing to say is that, you know, Lonely Planet and our titles are relevant, yes, during the peak summer months, but they're relevant year round as well. And this type of travel is one that we think will appeal to all groups. We think it will appeal to families. We think it will appeal to people who maybe aren't tied into the school holidays, etc. And yes, you know, we do make some suggestions around the country that hopefully will, you know, be thinking, meaning that people can think a little bit beyond some of those big classic destinations and some of the problems in travel in those very peak periods that you talked about. And a road trip by nature, I think, does help with the dispersal of visitors in a way that is more, you know, reasonable, I think, to people who are living in places, and also more manageable from a crowd's perspective. So if you look at one of the routes that we've got, we obviously cover southwest England in quite a lot of detail in the title, but one of the routes we flag up goes from Winchester to Glastonbury and Bath. So you're spending a limited amount of time in some of those really big destinations and a smaller amount of time in some of the others. We also give plenty of detours along the way. So there's plenty of choice within 36 different routes. I would hope that that means that crowds are manageable, even if we have an absolute runaway success on our hands with this title.
And do you encourage, not having seen the publication, do you encourage people to use their own transport, or are they encouraged to look at public transport?
It's a mix. You know, there's certainly, you know, plenty of suggestions if people are driving or using a camper van, which we know is something that's very popular. We flag up public transport options, and also, you know, walking, hiking, cycling routes along the way that can get people out of vehicles and again into more rural and remote areas.
Excellent. Well, just can you give me a quick summary of the routes that the book covers?
Absolutely. So look, we've pulled out 6 of the 36. So one is the Suffolk and Norfolk shore, which really sort of follows that coastline up through East Anglia. We have the Winchester to Glastonbury and Bath route that I've mentioned. There's a ferry hopping itinerary through the west of Scotland and its islands. One of my favourites is the Midlands battlefields, castles and stately home route, which gives us the chance to talk about some places that would really be quite unusual destinations, you know, making your way from sort of Nottingham down south through Leicester and then across Warwick and up to Lincoln, it's underrated cathedral town. We've got routes as North York Moors and Coast, which is absolutely stunning scenery, and also one that I was doing last week through Northwest Wales, which I just think, you know, pound for pound is some of the best scenery that you'll find anywhere in Europe.
Cool. And what's determined the routes that you have published?
I think we've been looking for a real range. So we've been looking for ways in which you can navigate and get to some of those classic destinations. We've been looking for ones that show off a real mix of some of the things that you'd find through a particular region. The Midlands one is a good example. So it flags up a lot of the history, but it also takes you through some of the really interesting and fast changing cities. And in some cases, we've gone for theme tours as well. So there's another one which is listing out the sort of literary connections to the Cotswolds, which we think is going to have a big appeal internationally, and obviously is very on point with people's enthusiasm for period dramas and the like. Okay,
you said 6 of 36. Explain what you mean by that.
This is just when we've been talking about the book, we just pulled out 6 of our favourite routes to discuss, which would just give those conversations a little bit more focus. But we think with 36 overall routes, there's a huge amount of choice. We've chosen those 36 routes really with the aim of how do we give a comprehensive overview of the best trips in the UK.
Marvellous, right. And finally, Tom, how do I buy this book, and how much is it?
Great Britain's Best Trips is available in all good bookshops and from lonelyplanet.com, and it costs $15.99.
Lovely. And it's available as of today?
Absolutely.
Good. Well, it sounds pretty good to me. I'd love to have I think I will get onto my Lonely Planet website and order myself a copy. Sounds really good, and add to these books Lonely Planet books I've got up here.
I can see a few behind you there. Yeah, it's great.
I'm a dedicated client. Good man. Tom, I wish you the very best of luck with this new book and with the emphasis on road trips in the UK, and look forward to speaking to you and maybe seeing you on the road somewhere around the UK.
That would be lovely. Thank you, Graham.
Cheers.